Sometimes the world just needs a hero to help cut through all the noise.
Well, now you have two.
Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to yet another awesome episode of Your Hero's Noise. I'm one half of this amazing duo. On the other side is the man, the myth, the legend. I'm Steve.
Wow, thanks, man.
You're welcome. Dude, you've been a myth, though. I don't know what's been going on with you. You've been out of the loop, bro, except online.
And I got nothing for you either. First of all, sorry. Folks, how are you? Dan Ramirez at your service. How y'all doing today?
Where have you been, man?
I have been in my backyard.
Okay.
I have been in my garage. I've been doing guy shit around the house, man. It's been fantastic.
Are you building the podcast studio?
No, but I'm getting ready to do it. I'm cleaning things out. I'm making arrangements.
I like your kitchen better.
Nah, it's too echoey.
Oh, can you tell the difference?
Yeah, big time.
Okay.
Big time.
Because you don't know, anyone that records music, I'll just tell you. He has the things on his wall that have like the little holes in it. I don't know what you call that, but it naturally, it's perfect for soundproofing.
What are you talking about? Oh, in the garage?
Yeah, it's that's what a lot of people are like, oh, we don't have to do anything to the wall because it just stops sound.
Pegboard.
So there we go. And you just happen to have that.
Does it really stop sound?
Oh, yeah, dude. It like blocks. The only thing better would be like milk cartons or like the legit soundproofing. But that's perfect. You don't just have, like, mine is just concrete and so it will kind of bounce around a little. Yours stops. There's no, like, if you go, there is no
I'm gonna go in there and try it out now. Not like right now.
You totally should.
But I'm gonna
compare it in your living room to in there, and you'll be like, "Oh yeah."
It's a huge difference in there. Like I noticed that both times that we recorded, even though they've only heard one of these, it was the one with Rebecca and Melissa was very echoey on our part.
Yeah. Do not do that. So, it's funny because remember last week we were talking. We got into a groove last week. And at the end, I was like, man, I really loved it. And normally you don't get responses from what you ask our listeners. And that kind of, like, a lot of times you won't get, like, immediate responses. I saw some stuff this week, bruh.
Yeah, they were liking something we were doing.
I mean, I was fairly surprised. I was like, well, look at this. This is an immediate, I think they like to hear, especially since you know things about music I don't, and vice versa.
Correct. We
don't both know the same music. You know what I'm saying? And so you are really, again, while we were talking about New Wave we weren't talking about it exclusively, but while New Wave was happening, I was listening to different music. I listening to different, like you were in New Wave. Like I
caught the back end of it. Yes, I did.
Oh!
Because I was a kid. I was like 7th grade when The Cure was really big, when Duran Duran was at their peak. Yeah, right around that time. But yeah, so I caught the back end of it, but I listened to it a lot. I listened to it so much, dude. I used to have posters all over my wall.
Oh my God.
And a lot of the music that I listened to, okay, Steve, and I know you've been studying this week. Did you happen to run across the term new romantic?
Yes, I did. I sure did. Oh, but it was on Wikipedia.
You have, like, let's see, Duran Duran, Culture Club, OMD, Spandau Ballet, all those kind of bands. They're a little bit nicer dressed, a little more fancy, or a little rouge on the cheeks. I think that's what the old ladies call it. Not the young ladies, but the old ladies do. They put on rouge. But I had these pictures, dude, all over my wall. And my dad, who was not like a homophobe or anything, I could tell that it was weighing heavy on him. Because did you happen to see who Nick Rhodes is or what Nick Rhodes looks like?
Did.
Lots of Nick Rhodes on my wall at the time. And I think he was thinking...
So did you know he was the keyboardist or no?
He grew up with, who would it be? Adrian Barbeau or something on his wall. I don't even know. Somebody like that. So, he's Nick Rhodes on my wall. Woo! He wasn't a perfect man, but he wasn't a homophobe or anything like that. But he definitely had some questions about me for a while.
Oh, well, here's the thing. I'm wondering why Nick Rhodes?
Oh, it wasn't just Nick Rhodes. I'm just saying he kind of stood out in all the pictures because they were all good-looking cats. You know what I mean? And they had lots of makeup on. Nick Rhodes tended to be one of the more effeminate ones of the bunch. But it wasn't like I just had Nick Rhodes all over my wall. He just sort of stood out.
Okay. He really That's totally fair. See, people, if you couldn't catch on, we are going to talk about new wave artists. And when we were talking this week, I said, we might as well start with, when I was studying it, there's only one group that kept coming up, and it's Duran Duran. They were a monstrosity then.
They were a beast.
I mean, there's one part which I will go into. I won't ruin it now, but they came to America with a cult following. UK, they were massive. We didn't really know about them. They left America. A certain song came out and got pushed in America. And literally they said it was Beatlemania all over again. Like shutting streets down for this group. That's a new wave group, which is why I was like, oh, and I was like, how did I miss Duran Duran? And they're like, oh, 1982. I was 4 years old. I wasn't exactly their target.
Perfectly explainable. Yeah.
I was
Don't feel bad.
4 years old. So I didn't really, I was still, I was just out of the musical loop. And these guys were a beast. So we are going to talk today as much as we can about the group we call Duran Duran.
Duran Duran.
Dan, what is your history with Duran Duran?
Well, Steve, I'm going to tell you. Have a seat.
Yes.
Get yourself a scotch, and I'm going to talk a little bit about Duran Duran.
Scotch.
Get yourself some eggnog.
I'm going to wax poetic.
So they are one of my all-time favorite bands, and it's because I think I don't know. Let me ask you a question before I go too far into it.
Okay.
Do you find that the bands that you really liked when you were, let's just use sixth grade, for example. Do those bands have a special place for you? I guess it just kind of depends on when you got into music, though, right?
They will always have. They're going to always have a special place in my heart, regardless of what other people say. I just, since they were the first whatever, or they represented something that was happening on that important golden age of my life.
Right.
They represent something. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so I was kind of like awakened during that time. I loved music. I was around music my entire life, but for some reason my brain tuned to music very much so when I was around in the sixth grade, so I really got into it. The band that happened to do it for me was Duran Duran.
I did not know that.
Yeah. If I really had to think about it, yeah. Because like in the sixth grade, MTV was huge, and I was glued to MTV, and you couldn't get away. You couldn't go 3 minutes without seeing a Duran Duran video.
Exactly. MTV was a humongous reason Duran Duran hit America.
And they spent the extra dollars, too, for their videos. Towards the end, they were putting out huge videos. That would be like 15 minutes long with, a whole scripted part in it and stuff like that. So that was kind of like a big thing back then. They were doing something that was different. They were also one of the innovators of having like big light shows for their stage.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Things like that sort of put them on the map. Plus, they were charismatic. And again, they were good looking guys. They were like the Fab Four. The women loved them. Let's just say that.
Oh,
It was one of those screamy type of concerts.
And for me, I only knew Reflex. And I only knew Nile Rodgers' remix to the Reflex.
Right.
It was like, okay, I kind of knew that song, like tangentially. Honestly, it wasn't until last week you gave me, Dan gave me a
history lesson.
A playlist of new wave artists. And I was going through them and I was like, okay, well, let me check out this Duran Duran situation. And because oddly enough, I knew a few of the artists more than I actually thought I did. The one that I knew the least was actually Duran Duran. I knew Howard Jones. I was like, how though? How did I know Howard Jones and didn't know Duran Duran? I knew a few Howard Jones songs, but so I go into Duran Duran. I was like, that was my introduction. Dan was my introduction to Duran Duran. So I am all these thoughts today are fresh opinions on these Duran Duran songs that Dan sent me.
I'm glad that this is your introduction to it, but it's weird because like you said, you had Howard Jones songs that you've heard before. Yes. I don't know. I sent you all kinds of stuff, but I don't know how many of those songs.
I knew like 3 NSX songs.
Uh-huh.
Yep, knew them. Police, obviously, it's hard to get around the Police. Crowded House, I knew off the jump. What else do you have here? The Go-Go's, Tears for Fears. I know a ton of Tears. But again, it's a lot of this had to do, like what they explained was a lot of these artists hit in US. Duran Duran didn't for a long time. So maybe I was hearing it, like Tears for Fears I heard on the radio when I was little. All the time. Duran Duran I didn't. But Tears for Fears Shout was everywhere. Like Shout was everywhere, dude.
See, that's the weird thing to me, because if that was everywhere, Duran Duran should have been there too. Maybe you just did. Maybe it's just one of those things that didn't resonate with you. I bet you heard more Duran Duran than you actually thought. It just never really stuck with you.
That, you know what? That might be it too. But I was also in LA, and maybe there, I remember hearing Prince. I heard Prince a lot. Obviously, Michael. Obviously, the big one was Africa. That song came on every 3 minutes. But let me tell you, here's the weird thing. It took them a while. Remember, their first number one hit was, I'm not going to ruin it, but they didn't have a number one hit for a while. That's how big the 80s were in America. You could be the biggest, huge, massive star in the world, and you still didn't get a number one because the 80s music was so big. Like Walk Like an Egyptian kept Duran Duran off number one for a while. That's crazy, but that's how competitive the 80s were. How many great 80s songs were there?
The 80s was comprised of multiple one-hit wonders.
Exactly. Over and over and over again. To ruin a little something, Springsteen, he didn't get a number one hit with Dancing in the Dark, dude. It just couldn't get past When Doves Cry. And so the fact that Springsteen couldn't get a number one hit, like the 80s were just a behemoth of monster singles. And so the fact that Duran Duran was able to break through is huge. And that might be the reason why I didn't hear a lot of them, because obviously a station just wants to play a bunch of number one, number three, number two, number four, number five hits over and over and over again. So maybe that's it. Or like you said, maybe it just didn't resonate with me.
I was actually thinking back when you were talking and figuring out, like, did I hear a lot of Duran Duran on the radio? And I can't really remember, because I really do associate it with MTV rather.
That's the thing. That's what they kept saying, was the MTV changed Duran. But also it was a situation of, I'm about to ruin a lot of stuff. It was a situation of they weren't hitting in America. So the London, we had a subsidiary out here, Capitol Records, from a London massive record company, and they told them, you need to keep on releasing this song until it's a hit. And like Nick Rhodes said, you'd never get that today. If it's not a hit, it's over. They kept releasing this song until it got into people's ears.
Look at this guy. This guy did do his homework.
We want you to be a hit. And then they said, but everything changed when MTV took a video.
What song are we talking about?
We're going to go through one by one, and then you're going to hear it. I don't want to ruin it for you.
All right. I'm just trying to get things queued up as well.
It's so fun. Okay. I will tell you the first song we're going to go over.
All right.
And also I'm going to, do we know where Duran Duran got their name?
Yes.
Okay. Tell the folks. Will you tell the folks?
So there was this bar called Barbarella somewhere in England, and Duran Duran used to play there. I believe it was Birmingham, if I'm not mistaken. But Barbarella actually comes from a movie, a Jane Fonda movie. And in the movie, there is a character named Duran Duran. And I believe that's where they got their inspiration for the name. I think it was all kind of tied together. You know what I mean? Someone was really into Barbarella, and they just took the name Duran Duran. Dr. Durand, actually.
Affirmative. And the funny thing is, there's the group members. The group members are Simon Le Bon, Roger Taylor, Andy Taylor, Simon Le Bon, Andy Taylor, Randy Taylor.
Nope.
I mean, Roger Taylor, Andy Taylor. There's another Taylor.
Yeah, there's Simon Le Bon, Nick Rhodes, Andy Taylor, John Taylor, and Roger Taylor.
And none of them are related.
Isn't that weird?
Okay, dude. I literally had to Google and be like, so how are these guys related? It filled it out for me in Google. And they're like, yeah, they're not. I said, what are the chances, dude? Like, how? That's too many Taylors. Taylor is probably maybe there's a bunch of Taylors in Birmingham, and we just don't know about it.
All the Birmingham Taylors got together.
Maybe that's what it is.
And said, who plays bass?
Think about if I said, hey, I started a group, and 3 of us are Hudson. Wouldn't you be like, that's pretty wild?
I would assume it would be family, yeah. Yes,
and let alone you happen to hit with a group of 3 people with the same last name. I'll be like, gee, the star, that's when you know the stars were freaking aligned. The stars were aligned, dude.
It is very odd when you think about it.
So the first song that I had on the list was Planet Earth, and it was their first single.
Let me just cue it up here, buddy. Let me get you.
Yes.
Give these people a taste of what we're talking about here. This is Planet Earth. I think we played a little bit of this last week. All right, coming at you.
Come on.
KDAN, Heroes of Noise show. We've got Duran Duran. Hey, they're the hottest band out there. Check them out. Ladies, get back. Most of them are taken. They're going to be playing tonight at the Warfield. Check it out. Here we go. That's a talk up, Steve.
That's a good song, dude.
It's a great song, man. I don't want to play the whole thing, of course, but just to give you guys a little taste.
For a first single, dude?
No, this comes out swinging. I hope I turn some people on to Duran Duran this time, man. I feel like we could actually do something and enlighten some people. You know what I mean? Bring light where there was no light about Duran Duran.
Well, the interesting thing about this song, from a young band, is modulating into the chorus. And then modulating back to the original key afterwards.
Oh, you're really diving right now.
Well, there's not a thing people do.
Listen to that.
That modulation is crazy.
Come on, man. Oh, this is going to be a good show. Now I'm starting to warm up a little bit. Booty's starting to shake.
Now, this is a song where they were just like, look, this was just like our coming out party. This is a situation of let's see how well it does. It did well in the UK. It went to number 12, but he's like, it did better in Australia. Went to number 8, which is not bad, people. We're in the 80s. That is not a bad thing. And so they got pumped. Now, mind you, looking back, you're like, you got pumped on a number 8 being Duran Duran, but they're a brand new group. First single.
Who wouldn't?
Don't even have an album yet. They later put it on Duran Duran. Later they put it on it. But right then they have no album yet. That's a great first effort, dude. I'm impressed.
They came out swinging.
They came out swinging, especially, like I said, with the weird chord progression. You're just like, oh, this sounds different. Whereas, and the thing is, it says a lot about the 80s. The 80s were not just a 4-bar loop decade. People were writing songs, like writing full-on songs. It wasn't a thing like that.
Like we were saying at the top of the show, New Wave is listed as several different genres, right? So you had punk rock, which it stemmed from, and then you had these bands that were more guitar-oriented, you know what I mean? Like Sex Pistols, The Clash, things like that, which more so punk, but they were starting to trot into the New Wave era. And then, like I said, that new romantic thing came along. And that's when you started getting more synth. And you were starting to do the glam thing a lot more. And there was a lot of drum machines and things like that. Mm-hmm. They're one of the main, I don't want to say the founders of it, but they definitely were one of the main innovators of it. Because this is how they set themselves apart.
Totally. And the thing is, I think a lot of this, and it's us. It's really America. We are very visual. It's like, for instance, there's a great story about how Christopher Cross was humongous, right? He was a great singer and all this stuff. He won a Grammy. Women saw what he looked like, and it kind of, people were like, oh. And they saw he didn't look like what they thought he would look like in their brain. U.S. is a very visual culture. Yes. No one had seen Duran Duran yet. That's a big thing. They have not been viewed, whereas in, UK just heard a great song. Australia heard a great song. It was like, hey, Planet Earth, pretty good, not bad. Number 8 is massive, but everyone does have a dream, and their dream is breaking in the U.S. Why? Who knows? But they believe breaking in the U.S. is a sign of popularity.
You know what I love about this? I'm going to learn a bunch of shit from you today.
You might. I don't know.
You do your homework is what I'm saying. So I appreciate it because you're going to teach me things about a band that I've been listening to forever because you really dive into these things. So thank you for doing the homework.
No doubt, bro. I got you. Now, the next song I put on, after, mind you, I put Planet Earth on spin. I was like, it's a good song, man. And so when I find out it's their first song, I'm like, if my first song is that good, I'm happy. And they said they walked out saying, good song. Next, and now this is not in chronological order, but the next listing song is Girls on Film. There is an argument over whose camera that is.
Really?
Yes. Like,
do tell.
Group members say it's like someone's camera, and the producer said it's someone else's camera. Not that it matters. What people just say.
It was me camera that was in the beginning of that song. No, it wasn't. It was me camera.
Come on.
I love this song, man. And that was the thing about Duran Duran too, is that you could be like dancing this shit in a club. A different kind of dancing, of course. But it was all like club music, man.
Here's the thing. Simon Le Bon and the group know how to make a catchy freaking chorus, dude.
Ooh, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Maybe you were saving this. What are your thoughts on the bass playing?
Oh, listen, on Rio? But there's legendary talks about Rio, because some people do not believe that he played that bass line on Rio. They said it's too good.
John Taylor was a monster, man. Still is.
Rio's bass line is insane. But the fact that when he talks about who he listened to, it makes total sense. Later on, he's like, oh yeah, I was listening to this. I'm like, oh, I see you, player. I'll tell you though. Yeah, he wasn't listening to, I'll just tell you, he wasn't listening to New Wave. He's like, yeah, for bass playing, he was listening to some cats. But so Girls on Film, funny thing, this was this was the band's third single for the group. The record company decided, hey, we want to release Careless Memories. I haven't even heard Careless Memories.
They still play it in concert. It's still a big song.
It flopped.
Yeah. It wasn't a hit.
Nothing.
But it was a hit with the fans. It just wasn't like a radio hit.
Yes, it didn't just like, oh my goodness, apparently. And so Duran Duran says, now that you guys have totally screwed over the release, can we release the song that we want to release? And the record company said, fine. And they decide Girls on Film, which goes on to become number 5 on the UK charts. They're making steps now. They're like, look, we're climbing. People latched on to Duran Duran. They're starting to be like, this group is something. They're not a major thing yet, but they're something. And they start to have like a sound now. Like Simon Le Bon has a vocal sound and a way he does lyrics and a way he does choruses. There's a thing they're getting. And that's huge because if you sound like everybody else, you just sound like everybody else. Already we now hear Simon Le Bon getting in his bag and the band getting into their bag. They have they always have a very, very, very catchy guitar riff. Like this one. There's always a catchy guitar riff, which is humongous.
Andy Taylor was an underrated guitar player.
Super underrated. Turned into sort of a...
He was trouble.
Later on. I mean, because when they said Beatlemania, I immediately said, oh boy, I know how that Beatlemania is. I know how that is, G. Be careful. Because, it's not like they grew up together. That's what you got to know, folks. These folks didn't grow up together. All the group members. It was a situation of Nick Rhodes and, was it Roger or Andy Taylor? I'm sorry, guys, this is way back in my notes. But they got a band together. When you get a band together, it's different. Like, than if you have people who kind of grew up together and then started a band. And that's what I thought when they're like, oh, and then, later on something happens. And when I look back, I'm like, you know what? That's really easy to happen because if I don't really know you that well, we don't know how success affects you. Like people I grew up with, I know what success is going to do to them. Kind of. At least in the general sense. Someone I meet later on, I'm kind of just like, well, because remember, they don't know each other very, very well. They've been together for some years. You don't really know each other.
And then they come onto the scene.
Boom! It explode.
Right. And they have women throwing themselves at them like Motley Crue did.
Yes.
Just in a different type of a setting. So, you have 5 guys that don't know each other that well, still learning about each other. Who's going to watch who? Who's going to be the devil's advocate?
Dude.
So things got bad for a while.
And I'm already rubbing my hands when I'm reading this. I'm like, oh. This is going to be so good. Not that I wanted there. I know how one thing I didn't know. I thought they were together for all these years. So the more I got into it, my brain was just like, oh, I can't just stop writing now.
That original band?
The core Fab Five, I thought they were together this whole time.
Got it. Okay.
So this song did not initially chart in the US, but later on they reissued the album and for some reason exploded. I have a feeling that has a lot to do with MTV.
Hell yeah, it does.
You know what I'm saying? Because no one liked it in America. And all of a sudden, same song, Girls on Film, they're just like, greatest song in the history. I'm like, wait a minute. It's the same. Now, mind you, record companies were doing their job and saying, oh, they didn't get it this time around. Let's do it again. Nowadays, record companies will be like, it's on you. If you don't hit, we'll move on to the next. They believe Duran Duran could be something. That's huge. That's what record companies are supposed to do.
Yeah.
They did their job, where it's just like, we're going to keep on bashing people in the head with Duran Duran. There's a quote that said, Duran Duran has to be a thing. Make it happen. That's what the record company said.
It was the perfect time for them to do that too, because they were good looking guys. Yep. Now they're on television. So much like how people, you didn't have the internet back then. So you didn't have things that were immediately at your fingertips. We didn't even have that back when it was just MTV, but we had the visualization of that. So it was like a new way of listening to music.
Bingo.
And it was, and what I'm getting at is it was kind of like a novelty, much like when people first had iPhones. You can't stop looking at your damn phone. But it was a new way of doing things, so everyone was into it. It was a part of pop culture. Yes, and everyone wanted a piece of MTV, which is why they got so big, I think. I don't know if they would have done what they did without the use of MTV.
They would not have. Because the song I'm about to tell you, that we're about to go into right now, music alone should have been a hit. And it didn't even chart in the U.S. We're talking about, of course, Hungry Like the Wolf. That was Nick Rhodes' girlfriend.
You're so into it. I love it. You're like Casey Kasem, man. You know that laugh at the beginning of the Duran Duran song was Nick Rhodes' girlfriend coming in at number 3.
Dan, that's a hit song. That song to me is a hit song, and the U.S. was like not buying it. It didn't even chart. The video comes out. And the song immediately goes to number 3 on the top 100.
You know what? Honestly, if I had to think about it, I think that I probably saw Rio, the video, more than any of the other ones. Like, they really pushed that song. I remember that.
The weird thing is, like, I saw the video for Hungry Like, I'm like, that's a good video. But I'm like, oh, when you see those guys, they're stars, G. These guys are stars. There's no question. These guys are stars.
If I remember correctly, the video had them on a boat.
Yep.
No. Was it Rio?
That's the boat. Yep. No, the Hungry Like the Wolf.
Hungry Like the Wolf, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking of the album. Hungry Like the Wolf was the one where they're walking through the jungle.
Yep. Sure is.
They're trying to chase a wild woman.
Yeah, that is strange when you talk about it.
She's just feral. And then you hear her at the end of the song, too. She's like, nah. I don't know what's going on, but I think they caught her.
Now, the interesting thing about Hungry Like the Wolf is, here's the funny part. Here's what makes this band a special freaking band. So, they decide to get together, and they go to the basement studios of EMI's London studio place, right? And they start, Nick Rhodes gets on the sequencer, like a drum machine.
Right.
And he starts messing with the drum machine. As each band member arrives, they start putting in their own stuff. Everything, including the vocals, were recorded in a day.
Sometimes it just comes together that way.
Gee!
Some of the best songs do, right?
Bruh, listen. And now the thing is they re-recorded it later, but they said literally it just was put together exactly the same way. They said we recorded and put together that song, we put together that song just the same way. And the producer that produced the song is Colin Thurston, and he did Too Shy.
Oh, yeah. Kajagoogoo.
Mind you, he produced that song with Nick Rhodes. And Nick Rhodes wrote it.
Yeah, I think he did a lot of songwriting. Did he? I mean, I'm sure that you studied up. He did a lot for people, didn't he, in the 80s?
Sure did.
Yeah,
but that was the hit, and this later on comes back to Duran Duran. He makes a hit for Kajagoogoo, and Duran Duran's like, hey, yo, we haven't had a number 1 yet. And since you're so quote-unquote hit-making, already you see it. I'm like, oh, yeah, exactly.
Oh, the hit maker's now making hits for the band.
Bro, I'm rubbing my hands. Like, oh. But, okay. So
egos are starting to grow.
Gee. And so Andy Taylor says of Colin, quote, and the producer, he said, he was a great organizer and arranger. We gave him all the major ideas in the music on the track, and he decided what was needed. And he literally, they said, quote, he whittled down all the unnecessary stuff. Because when you're in the studio and you have all the studio time in the world, you just add a bunch of stuff. Even adding a bunch of stuff, they finished the song in a day.
That's amazing.
That is absolutely incredible. And this is the greatest quote. John Taylor says, quote, I guess you're always striving to get back to that. It's that combination of confidence and naivete, actually, that allows you to just, I call it surfing the zeitgeist. It's when everything you do is right. You don't have to think. You're so plugged into what's happening. And then as you get older, then you start thinking. And by that point, the press and the media have said so much about you that you've become self-conscious. And it becomes more difficult and more self-conscious as you get older. He admits, he's like, if I wouldn't have even thought about press and media, we could have done this forever. We weren't even thinking. Everything we did turned to gold at that time.
Could you imagine that just being under, and it happens still to this day. You have bands like, I don't know, let me think of one. Like say 5 Seconds of Summer, who are nowhere near as big as that band. Or yes. 21 Pilots still.
Bruno Mars.
Yeah. Having people just screaming but having people just screaming at you all the time. You put that on top of the tension between the bands and then the egos and everything like that, man. It's like a tinderbox waiting for a spark.
That's all it was. It was like, right then, they were so inoculated because technically they were still in the mode when they record Hungry Like the Wolf. They're still they're getting big in UK, but they haven't quite seen what US people, how crazy they can actually go. They haven't actually seen that level of success yet. And John Taylor says, quote, he doesn't know what the lyrics are. He said, I don't know what the lyric means. He says that it probably has something to do with meeting girls or wanting to have sex with someone. I mean, that sounds about right. He's like, he still doesn't know to this day. He's like, I don't know what Hungry Like a Wolf means.
Just chasing feral women in the jungle.
Yeah. He's like, it sounds like this. But the thing is, they're like, it doesn't matter. Anything we wrote was gold. It didn't matter what we wrote. Just whatever we wrote was humongous. That's when you know, because normally when a hit happens and someone's really into their brain, they'll be like, here's what Hungry Like the Wolf really means. What we're saying is, no. He's like, who knows? Who cares? We just knew how to make hit songs. That is humongous. And he says, so he's like, we have a massive cult following at this point in the UK. He said, we go to US, we have a good sized cult following, but that cult following they talk about, they said 20 women are going insane. 100 women are going bat crap crazy. We leave, the MTV video for Hungry Like a Wolf comes out. We come back to America.
Whole different story.
He said it was night and day. He said they shut down a main street because we were doing a signing at a store. He said we couldn't even get out. That's when we knew, oh no, this just got crazy. All it took was the Hungry Like the Wolf video. Game changer, because they now saw these fellas. They saw them. And they're lookers, ladies and gentlemen. Good enough looking where if I was a producer and they walked in my brain, I'd be like, I'm not going to bring my wife over today. Those are some good looking fellas. Like strong jaw. Everything. Like Simon Le Bon has it. At the time, his look, he had it. Like he had the look. And he just happened to be able to, first of all, people, this isn't a guy who just went about life as a looker. He could sing. Like Simon Le Bon has a good voice.
He's got a great voice. And they gave him more of the masculine role too, because he was the front man. The other guys were a little more effeminate in the way that they were more flamboyant in their wardrobe and whatnot. Simon Le Bon was flamboyant as well, but he had a little bit more of a masculine tone for him. So it was kind of perfect. It was selling it, man. Sex sells.
Exactly. And also today, unless it was a Logic Pro, which they do sometimes, like they'll run a Logic Pro vocal behind a concert, which makes total sense because you can't just have all the sounds going at a concert. So they run Logic. He sounds the same, bro. When he does Girls on Film, he sounds exactly the same.
Last time I saw them was, I want to say around like 2001, maybe? 2006. I believe they all got back together around 2006. And they still killed it. They still sounded great. It wasn't like, oh, it's nostalgia and I'm sitting here watching a band I used to love, so I'm enjoying it that much more. No, they sounded on point. Their show was on point. Everything was great, man.
The thing is, they did a thing that Queen did. They made stadium music.
Yes.
They made a song that the stadium would sing to. They didn't mean to do that. Girls on Film is that's a thing where you put the mic to the crowd for that chorus. It's perfect for that. And then it's like all these songs are so easily resung. The only thing that's hard is Hungry Like the Wolf. And that's because for some reason he changes the words every chorus. I don't know why he does that. But some of the choruses are different. He changes the words around. Here's the funny part. All of them they still know it. They know the song like the back of their hand. It's a great freaking song. But even the US wasn't buying it yet until they saw the video. Everything changes. Everything changes. And so from here on, we're talking about Duran Duran.
And so the ride begins.
And almost like, unfortunately, which happens with a lot of group, this is where the ride is at the top, which sucks because the higher you get, you should be going higher. But the higher they're getting, they're now on the downswing. Because little do they know, things are boiling now. Because all of them are handling success in a very different manner. Some of them love it. Andy loves it. Like, he loves the spotlight. And he's not getting enough of it. But we'll talk about that later.
Since you're so interested, he has a book from his side of the story, and it's called Wild Boy, My Life in Duran Duran. So you like rock docs and things like that.
Oh,
you should totally read this book. It's good.
What is it called again?
It's called Wild Boy. It's actually written by Andy Taylor.
Okay.
My Life in Duran Duran.
Oh, I would love to hear his side of things.
It's pretty good, man. I was into it.
Oh, man. Because, look, you're never going to get as much love as the, lead singer. He's the guy. And I think he wanted to be the guy.
But he had most of the talent. They were a very talented band, but he was like driving that band with the hits.
But it's just when you have a guy up front writing these lyrics that just happen to connect with everybody. Like, how does he, who knows? Hungry Like the Wolf? Who knew Simon Le Bon was just going to come up with that phrase and it just blew up? That's a crazy phrase. He just happened to know, he knows how to make little catchy choruses and little fun verses. It's just fun for him. And like Nick Rhodes said, he's like, everything we touch, it just wasn't hard anymore. And like we could just make a hit at the drop of a dime, which leads us into the amazing. Now, this song I couldn't find anything on either. And this is the third single off of Rio called Save a Prayer.
Ooh, that's a good one, man.
And which is why I'm like, why can't I get a lot from this? But they don't really talk about it. They're just like, it was a song. It was just a normal song to them. I think it's a great song. But they're like,
this is probably one of my favorite songs, actually, by them.
Really?
Yeah, most definitely. Sing it, Simon.
You saw me standing by the corner of a main street.
Lots of love into this song, Steve, back in the 80s.
Yes. This is almost a song they had to write as a break in the album.
I think this song is Nick Rhodes' song, big time. Like, he's the best in it. He's the standout. All that shit he's doing in the background with the synth.
Oh, yeah, dude.
In the background,
that bass line is nasty. You already hear it happening for Homie.
Don't say a prayer for me now. Save it till the morning after. No, don't say a prayer for me now.
It's a great song, dude.
Just want to give him a chorus real quick.
It's a great song. And the thing that they really did with the Jupiter, the keyboard they're using, is like you can just hold the chord and it does these sequences and just runs through the chords randomly. And I'm like, they knew how to use that really well.
What's that called?
Arpeggio.
Arpeggio. I knew I was going to say it wrong.
Yeah.
I was going to say arpeggio or something like that.
Yeah, it's a arpeggiator where you just set it, just like which is, the thing is though, you can use it tacky. Rhodes uses it very, very sparingly and very well on only certain songs. And he also uses it to make a really, really catchy synth part. which was really important back then, and now it's coming back. Catchy synth parts are coming back, but like that is a song. It's not just a loop. That is actually a song. Like at the end, they do that huge vamp where they're just doing the Save a Prayer for Me Now over and over again until they do the Save it for the Morning After and go right back into and it's great. The thing is, it's fantastic, dude. And Simon Le Bon just shows I can sing without all this other stuff. He just has a good voice. And this was the third single from Rio, which I know you love. But do you know what kept this in the UK from the number one spot randomly? It's from a movie.
What year are we talking? If you have it available, it's like 83.
Rio was released in 1982.
Okay, 82. Was it Call Me by Blondie?
No, it's from a movie. It's the song that you remember from a movie. Right when I say it, you're going to be like, oh. Okay.
Go for it.
Bump, 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 bump.
Ah.
Yeah. Eye of the Tiger kept them off.
You can't be fighting with Rocky.
That's a hard one to get back, Doc. I think they could have, but not with this song. This isn't the song that's going to get past Eye of the Tiger.
No, but you're also dealing with the Rocky phenomenon, too. Rocky
you know
was
what? You're
huge.
right. No, you're right.
Like
you're
I was
right,
saying before on another episode, when people saw Rocky movies, they were standing up in the theater, literally standing up and like,
true.
Get him, Rocky, and swinging and shit. It's crazy. I remember that. No exaggeration.
But in the UK, too?
Hey, Rocky was a triumph story, man.
You ain't even lying. And the thing is, that says a lot about Eye of the Tiger, that it was kept. Duran Duran was a monster by now. And it kept them off saying, no. We want more of the Eye of the Tiger.
Easy, Duran Duran. Let me have my moment in the sun.
That group kept them out of number. Well, again, like you said, Rocky.
They had the Eye of the Tiger. Give them a break.
That was huge. But it wasn't the song to knock. I do believe Hungry Like the Wolf would have knocked it out of the top spot. You don't believe with the Rocky phenomenon, Hungry Like the Wolf could have done it?
I think it was a matter of timing. I think everyone was just so high on Rocky.
You don't think there's any song that could have knocked it out?
No, I'm sure there was, but you're asking me what happened, and I'm telling you I think that's what happened.
Okay. Yeah, I think Hungry Like the Wolf could have beat it. I think, unless the Rocky phenomenon was bigger than I knew, because I was young.
Steve. Trust me, it was.
Was it really? I saw it later on in life. And I was just like, yeah, it's probably big.
Next week on Heroes of Noise, Rocky.
Rocky, yeah, you ain't lying. Because I remember watching Eddie Murphy be like, Rocco. And I was like, were people that pumped on it?
Oh, dude. Understatement. It's so crazy that you don't know that.
That's funny. So next we're going to get to the actual title song of their title album called Rio. Down. All right, can you push pause?
What's up?
You know how they made that sound?
How?
What they did was they threw a bunch of rods on piano strings and played the sound, and then they reversed it.
LSD, ladies and gentlemen, it'll get you places.
That might be what it was, legitimate, because it's a weird intro. Now, what y'all are about to hear is John Taylor acting an absolute, uninhibited fool on the bass. As in, he decides to be like, oh, by the way, I'm a better bass player than 90% of y'all.
Guys didn't know I could do this, did you?
That's exactly what he was wanting to do. And I know for a fact, here's the funny part, Duran Duran didn't know. They did know. They totally knew that he was that good. But apparently throughout their history, they downplayed their musicianship. All of the musicians said, we're not that good, we just started playing. So that they shocked people when they played. How crazy is that?
They're like the smart kid trying to act dumb, failing
tests
tests on
purpose. That's what
purpose.
they were doing because they looked good and they're like, oh, we just started playing these instruments. And then when they started playing, people were like, whoa! Until people caught on later and was like, wait a minute. They all knew how to play already. And so, check this out, y'all. Listen to that bass line. He's killing. He's killing.
That's the one thing, man. I always recognize that about him.
Bucks, you better be listening, Johnny. Listen to that bass line.
What you know about John Taylor, Bucks?
Buster's probably gonna send me a video of him playing the exact bass line and be like, next.
with that new bass of yours.
Oh yeah, that's right. Congratulations, Tommy. See, this is okay. The chorus is okay to me. It's fine, but man, when that the verse, when that chorus hits you.
Is that Nick wrote synth?
What a wonderful freaking chorus. And the whole song, John Taylor is destroyed. And this is a known, like when you Googled Rio bass line, people are like, yeah, this is a freaking hard bass line. What he's doing is really, really difficult. When they asked him about it, they're like, hey, how did you come up with that bass line? He said, I was listening to Sly and the Family Stones, I Want to Take You Higher. I said, of course you were. That's what you were listening to. And you could hear his soul in it.
John Taylor was a very funky, very funky, very soulful musician.
He didn't listen to the music that I would think he's like, no, for me to play like that, I listen to. But he said they all listened to Sly. He's like, we wanted a new kind of sound that didn't. And I was like, that's why y'all sounded so different. And that's why he chose a later producer that they chose was because their ear were to the street. They knew. They're like, yeah, we can't be using these same new wave producers. We need something brand new. Now, also, this song is almost identical, except for the lyrics and the vocals. But the chord progression is identical to a song that's called Stevie's Radio Station. He loved the song so much that they just literally ripped the chord progression. It's identical. Like you could sing this song to Stevie's Radio Station. It's almost weird. Like I was like, I'm surprised they didn't get sued. Because when I looked it up, I was like, no, that is definitely Rio. And the thing is, I could totally understand how you hear a chord progression. You're like, I'll just use that. Because you hear a chord progression, you start singing something else to it. You're Duran Duran. I'm just going to just do my thing. I'm just going to do my thing to it. And the odd thing is, from Stevie's Radio Station, the guy that sung that song was one of the original members of Duran Duran before they got Simon Le Bon.
What was his name? Do you remember?
I think it was Andy Luckett or something like that, some random name. But I was like, that sure is coincidental that the song that he ended up singing, they literally took it, which isn't bad, I guess.
I'll be taking that, mate.
I mean, they made it a freaking monstrosity of a hit. And again, this did not become a hit until Hungry Like the Wolf came out. And then it retroactively became a hit. How crazy is that? Hungry Like the Wolf changed everything.
A few of their songs became retroactive hits.
Yes, and it's just all because people saw them and was like, oh, that's what they look like. And then they just started listening to their music, which says a lot about US because UK loved them. The US was like, saw Hungry Like the Wolf and be like, let's check out this whole album. And it happened. And Rio is a great song to me. I think it's a fantastic song. What the words mean, I think, are pretty much plain as much as possible. But again, they admitted we don't really concentrate that super hard on the meaning behind things. If it means something to you, he still hadn't explained like reflex or anything like that. Simon Le Bon is historically kind of vague on his lyrics.
I think a lot of their songs are definitely like poetry set to music.
Yeah, that's it. He's just like, these things rhyme and it's fine and it's good. But it's the music behind it and the
melodies.
Way that the melody that he does, he knows how to make an earworm and just get it stuck in your head. And you'll be like, because when I started listening to these songs, I was like, yeah, I'm not buying it. And then the next day I go to work and be like, let me check this out. And I listen to it again. And I'm like, why did I even listen to that again? Then the next day I'm like, I'm in the mood for some Duran Duran. I'm like, oh, this is how they did it. It's just, you think you didn't like it. And next thing you know, you're like, let me go back to that. Let me go back to that. And all of their songs, the ones that you sent me, all of them are like that. Where it's just like, it's so easily digestible. There's nothing that's insane about them, nothing that I'm just like, you can just whistle along to all their songs, especially their choruses. And so Rio's yet another one where, the UK got it, US didn't. But again, like we talked earlier, MTV changed Duran. The MTV was almost like their promo company. MTV was Duran Duran's promo company.
That's a good way of putting it.
They just played them on spin, and people fell in love with this group. They fell in love with their videos. They fell in love with the looks of these guys. They almost made a look for the rest of the people. Like, you kind of look like this. This is how New Wave looks, because that's all you saw was them. And you're not going to walk around looking like Boy George. They were like, you could dress like that at high school. You could dress like Duran Duran in high school and not look totally, like as far as the hair, it would look totally crazy. You go and walking like, looking like Boy George, people would be like, oh, that's an interesting get up. But you can kind of look like these fellas.
There was a lot of it. I remember.
See, I had to Google it, and I'm like, oh my God. I was like, oh, everyone looked like that. I'm like, this is crazy.
It was big, dude. Seriously, it really was.
I mean, people walking around the mall, you're like, oh, that is Duran Duran's hair. That's a thing now. Like, they saw these guys, and that's a thing. And again, the reason I'm so surprised is because this is my first introduction. This monstrosity of a group. I'm introduced, and I'm diving into this rabbit hole. I'm like, oh my gosh. These guys were meant to have this happen. But again, you almost smell it coming, dude. Because you're like, you don't know. A person's not supposed to reach this sort of fame. It's not natural for a group of people to reach this sort of fame. B, when you call it Beatlemania, I'm surprised someone didn't look back and be like, wait a minute, I think I heard this story before. What happens at the end, I wonder? And then say, okay, guys, we need to talk. No one did that to them. They didn't have someone to just pull them aside and be like, look, this is going to get, like if they had like someone like Michael Jackson or someone humongous to say, here's what you're going to run into. This is what this is going to look like. Imagine having Paul McCartney sit with them and be like, hey, all this, yeah, it's cute right now. But let me tell you something. Here's what's going to happen around the corner.
Yeah, listen up, kid.
Yes, but they didn't have that because they didn't. Who in their immediate circle was as big as them? They were humongous.
They had a lot of yes people around them.
Yes,
now let's throw in
exactly.
sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Bingo. No one could tell them how it's, because look, they said arguably, Nick Rhodes said, arguably, we're the biggest group on the planet. Arguably. At a certain point, we are the biggest group on the planet. Who can say that? And you can't argue it.
Their numbers were proving it.
Exactly. He said we were walking around the biggest group on the planet. Come on, G. God, I love this story. This story was so freaking good. Because it's any of us could have went through that, and the same thing would have happened to us. You don't know. I mean, all of them reacted to this fame. And again, no matter how many times I say it, folks, I keep on saying it. You have to Google it. Google their promo stops. It's a madhouse. Like, it's people screaming, trying to climb over each other. It's insane.
I'm pretty sure there's a behind the music about them too that you could probably look up on YouTube.
Yeah, check that out. Because now, mind you, we are now at Rio. They cannot walk in public anymore. This is a 3-year period, people. 2 to 3 years, they go from no one knows who you are. Nick Rhodes Nick Rhodes gets the idea of Duran Duran in 1978. 5 years later, he can't go anywhere publicly. 5 years is nothing.
He's hanging out with Andy Warhol and such.
Gee, think about that. That is crazy. And people are like, well, it's 5 years. But like, no. And mind you, I wouldn't even call that Beatlemania because Beatles made albums for 7 years and did the same thing. They didn't really know how to, we didn't have the internet. So they didn't know how to deal with the Beatlemania. They couldn't even compare it to anything. Like, if it would have been nice if they could have seen it on TV and be like, okay, or seen it behind the music for the Beatles or a documentary on the Beatles and be like, oh, this is how you handle this sort of thing. There is no guidebook on this for them. They go from 0 to 60 quicker than how many bands? How many bands do that in 3 years, Dan?
Not that many. Not any.
I haven't. None, bruh.
I threw that out there for conversation. I'm like, wait a second. Really? No, not
None.
any of them.
Because remember, even though the Beatles only recorded about 7 or 8 years, which would make them phenomenal that they made that impact, but they were playing together for years. This wasn't the case for Duran Duran. They hit the ground, recorded a song, all of a sudden the wheels start moving. They are behemoth in 3 years. So now they're sitting in their popularity, which is totally dope for all of them right at this very second I'm speaking. Everything's going wonderfully.
Yeah, and you're getting them on MTV. You're listening to them on the radio.
Exactly.
You're seeing them in concert. They're being guest VJs on MTV. So now you're not only listening to their music and watching their videos, but you're getting their personality. People were falling in love with Duran Duran.
And they're personable. They're not like Prince. I love Prince. He wasn't a great interview. He just didn't say anything.
No.
Which is okay for Prince. These guys were actually, they knew how to be Duran Duran.
They had personalities.
Totally. They were Duran Duran. So the next song we're going to be talking about is a song that Dan loves. It's a song that the title of this song is not said in the whole song. That's it.
I love this damn song so much.
I know you do.
The song's called The Chauffeur. It's the last one, matter of fact, Steve, on the album Rio. And I think it's the best one, in my opinion.
Whoa.
Out on the top lanes, the glides are moving. Oh, looking for a new place to drive. You sit beside
And Simon Le Bon is at his Simon Le Boniest in this one.
Gee. He has a great voice, bro.
But this song never really hits a full crescendo, you know what I mean?
It's such a beautiful song.
He's got that doubler on his voice. A little bit of reverb.
Nick Rhodes, dude. Nick freaking Rhodes, dude. God,
This song's just
man.
creepy. You get the idea. But just, it's so...
Here's the thing. Okay, now people, this is coming from a producer's thought process. If you're when you're coming up with a song, Nick Rhodes doesn't have that thing going on. He's playing chords behind Simon singing. He then goes and creates this thing he's doing now, which is crazy. I mean, Nick Rhodes he's almost doing a duet with Simon Le Bon on the piano, on the synthesizer.
That's a good way of looking at it.
He's doing a duet with him. He's just not singing. It's just, dude, if I could sit with Nick Rhodes and be like, what the hell were you thinking? How did you do that? Because this song would be a hit today.
It's all about this right here.
Sing,
So dope.
Pretty good. I call this song randomly in my brain to remember some of the stuff. I call it the Song of Twos. The reason I do that is because this was made 2 years before Simon Le Bon even joined the band. He wrote these lyrics. There are 2 versions of the songs that have been recorded by the band, 2 separate versions. And this is just one of them. And then there are 2 different music videos made by 2 different directors for this song.
One of them they banned on MTV.
Now that I didn't know. Why'd they ban it?
It was dirty, Steve. There was a few videos like that.
But because remember, I Want Your Sex was banned too.
Yeah, but this one had nudity.
Oh, well, UK doesn't care about that stuff. US probably does. That's
Oh,
what
of course.
Yeah, there it is. And you know, it's interesting because when I read about what this song's about, I re-listened to it over and over again. I'm like, oh, I could see that. Where it's just like a first-person view of a chauffeur on a hot day with a beautiful woman in the back of his car. I was like, yeah, I can see that. I can totally see that. I think it's a great song. It's one of those songs that annoy me because if I was looking for the song back in the day, remember, we didn't have Google. We couldn't just search the lyrics. It's like Careless Whisper. If I was looking for the song, I would be like, is it Sing Blue Silver? I would never say, let me look for the single chauffeur. The chauffeur. Why would I look for that?
Right.
I would look for I Never Want to Dance Again for Careless Whisper. And so I'm just like, I love the song, hate when people do that thing where they're going to name it something that they never say. At least George Michael says Careless Whisper in the song. He never says the chauffeur in the song. And the funny thing about this song is, on the night that he auditioned for Duran Duran, he had a notebook, and in that notebook was this song. I'm like, gee, what are the chances? This was just meant to happen. Duran Duran was meant to happen. The universe was, like they said, they were surfing the zeitgeist. It was just happening.
Riding the wave.
Remember, gee, look, they took my stuff. And so this song was a surprise to me because the first time I listened to it, immediately I liked it. And I was like, why? I'm like, well, obviously, because the piano. It was a thing he did, having a duet with somebody, not overpowering that somebody, and actually everything that he did on the keyboard accentuated what Simon Le Bon was doing on the vocals. He didn't go, some people have I'll play the melody along with you on the piano. And it's just like, no, that doesn't work. He didn't. He played a completely separate melody that perfectly counterpointed what Simon Le Bon was doing. That is a level, I guarantee Nick Rose listens to it and smiles sometimes. He's like, people don't know how dope I did that, Johnny. I guarantee it, we're just like, people don't understand how dope that backing track is. Because that backing track is like that. Ooh, that is a dope backing track, dude. And so, yeah, from jump, I like this song. And it's not the kind of song that I would like. It's because they're so good at what they're doing that you have no choice but to give it props.
Yeah, technically, you should be all over this band. This is all you. You know,
it turns out
it's got Steve written all over it.
Oh, for sure. And the thing is, also, they're in my repertoire of, if I was talking to another songwriter who they should listen to, I'd be like, for lyrics and catchy melodies, these are one of the people you need to listen to. Because they were making songs. Remember how he was explaining, Nick Rose was like, hey, we weren't thinking too hard. Once you start getting famous and press and media, then you start thinking too hard and then rethinking yourself. And now you have something to beat, which is you. You're beating yourself now. I am now trying to beat my last number 2 song.
Constantly trying to outdo yourself.
Always. He said, before that, we'd walk into the thing, do Hungry Like the Wolf, and just be like, whatever, toss it out. Let's go. And it was a hit. The goal is to try to keep that going. And now, I mean, kids can easily do that because you're on SoundCloud and you don't have anything to match yourself up with until someone picks you out of SoundCloud and you're a star. All of a sudden, you never sound like that SoundCloud rapper. Like, Eminem's never going to sound like Marshall Mathers anymore. He's never going to sound like what he used to sound like. Ice Cube's never going to sound as hungry as Predator because you now have so many eyes and things on you that you don't really have that same lackadaisical, Eminem coming out when I was just a little baby boy, my name used to tell. He doesn't do that anymore because it's just like, oh, I have something to beat now. I got to get Rihanna on the track. You know what I'm saying? And so we're listening to Duran Duran right now in their bag.
At their hungriest.
At their absolute. And the thing is, they're not even trying. They're just having fun, doing what they love to do, and putting out albums. We now are about to get into the situation of, we're Duran Duran, but I kind of want to do this and I kind of want to do that. And the only person that kind of has a singular vision is Simon Le Bon and Nick Rhodes. They're the ones that are just like, hey, let's just have fun. And it takes more than that.
Well, I think there was also a lot of creative differences going on with Andy Taylor versus the rest of the band. Because I think he wanted to rock it out a little bit more. I'm not sure he was completely down with staying in that synth sound. I'm pretty sure that he wanted to do more of a rocky thing with them.
For sure. And he also wanted to be out front a little more. Which you can't. You can do the Queen thing, but even though Queen had one of the best guitarists of all time, he still understood. He admits, I knew who was the man. He knew Freddie Mercury was it. I don't think Andy Taylor knew that. From what
I said, I think he did a lot of the songwriting. As far as maybe not necessarily all of the songwriting, but he did put in a lot of those hooks.
Totally.
And he's a big part of that era of Duran Duran. And also, John Taylor also wanted to do harder music too. And they ended up getting that a little bit later on.
And the thing is, as much as I love all of them, they all added their thing. Without that voice,
yeah, you don't
everything he had such a singular, at this point now, if you showed me 5 different singers, I'd be able to point out Simon Le Bon, no problem. Because he has, not only does he have a tone, But there's a way he pronounces things that is not like anybody else that pronounces things. He pronounces words differently. And and the thing is, I've never heard them sing.
Yeah.
Maybe one of them could out-sing Simon Le Bon, but they couldn't sing like Simon Le Bon. Like, if I knew I could out-sing him, I would be frustrated. Because now I'm just the keyboarder, or if I'm just the bass player, or I'm just the guitar player. But out-singing someone doesn't mean that you sing like them. Like, there's a difference. Not, like a lot of people can get out there and be like, I could out-sing Sly Stone. Yeah, but can you do what Sly Stone does? No. You can't do what he does. I can out-sing James Brown. First of all, you probably can't. Secondly, but can you do what James Brown does? You know what I'm saying?
I think there's certain bands that actually can get away with replacing their singers. Somehow Van Halen did it. It's debatable. Some people just hate the Sammy Hagar phase, and it's all David Lee Roth, and it's also the opposite too. But if you take Simon Le Bon out of Duran Duran, you don't have Duran Duran anymore. There's no one that you can plug in that's going to make it sound the same way.
And I don't even think they could do the thing what was that group that went on that worldwide search and someone sounds just like Homie?
Journey?
You can't even do that. You can't even do that because it is such a singular voice. I don't think you
and
can
presence.
do that. And present. Because when you see him live, here's the fun part. Simon Le Bon understands what he can and can't do. He can just walk from one side of the stage to another while singing because the star of the show is his voice. Oh my, when he opens his mouth, and that voice comes out, the crowd is like, oh my God, that's the voice I've listened to through my whole life. It's just like James Taylor. When he starts singing, you're like, oh, that's why I'm here. Because that's the voice that's been, Stevie, that's the voice that's been in my brain for all these years. He has one of those. And
You're totally right. He didn't have to do a lot either. He just, like you said, walk back and forth, maybe run a little bit, do a spin, something, but that was it.
And
it was
kind of just looks at
the
people.
star of the show was his voice.
Yes. Because it's kind of weird how much he sounds the same now. It's almost strange. He
sounds great still.
He sounds amazing. And it's like he put the song, he put his voice in a bottle and just opened it up in 2005 again. Where it's just like, oh yeah, I can still do this. Just like in 2001, 93, 90, I could still do this thing. Like no problem. Very few people can do that. George Michael, he comes back into his tour, in the 2000s and sounds exactly the same. That's not a normal thing, but I think a lot of it has to do with the artists that aren't singing above their range, like Harry Connick Jr. He doesn't sing above the range, so he's never going to wear out his voice. Stevie sings very high. His voice is going to give out. Elton John had very high songs. What you don't know at 20 is that your voice is not going to sound the same at 70. It's just not. James Taylor wrote low songs, and so he can sing the songs very low. And his voice just stays. Simon Le Bon has songs that were in his range. He didn't try to push himself. So now he can sing those songs no problem. For me, it's high. For him, it's like, oh, this was my normal everyday range. I didn't try to do something silly. And so he sounds amazing now. He's one of the few that can actually do that. And
plan ahead, guys. Always plan ahead.
Yes. And also, look, what we're about to get into is when you realize that they're still traveling that they were until a few years ago, some years ago, they were still touring. When you hear the story, the fact that they are touring now is insane. Because technically, what happens should have been game, set, match. Because that's what happens. When you talk Beatlemania, we know the end of the story. And it wasn't their end of the story. They somehow broke the mold. And it was because one of them, not to ruin the story, they understood I'll be the bigger man and call around and ask, say, hey guys, why don't we do this again? Oh, what a good story this is. Anyway, I love the fact that it wasn't managers going to them. It was Simon and Nick picking up the phone and being like, we miss you. God, what a great story this is.
I did not expect this from you, so I'm kind of winging it.
As a music nerd, dude, I
should have known.
It's unfortunate. I think it's annoying to some people though, where it's just like, okay, we get it, G. We can go on to the next song. I'm hoping people aren't annoyed by this one. Where you're like, okay, get to the next song.
Easy, Casey Kasem.
Yeah, let's go. Now, This next song, this is the one that at first I did not like. I will admit this. I did not like this song, and it's a song called Is There Something I Should Know?
Please, please tell me now. Please, please tell me now.
You didn't like this song?
No.
Please, please tell me now.
I think this was another one of those songs for me that actually really put them on my map. So I've always liked this one. Plus, again, MTV, dude.
There it is.
Good shit. So you're saying that you didn't like the song, but you turned around?
I did.
And turn it down here. Please, Steve, tell the story.
What happened was I listened to the song. Here it is right here.
Yesterday, tried to find my mountain hideaway. Maybe next year, maybe no go.
You were saying?
It is such an earworm. You can't help but start. And that thing, the day, it's a shadow of things to come. That thing is a shadow of, it's like a forerunner of what we're gonna do later. So anyway, the more I listened to this song, the more I understood, oh, this is a good little poppy fun song. It's totally fun. And it's about a very dark subject.
Please, please tell me now. Is there something?
This is a high song to sing, dude.
Is there something I should say?
Yeah, his register's a little bit higher
Dude,
than
that is high, bro.
Do you feel the same? 'Cause you don't let it.
So this song grew on me, and I was like, this is a perfectly fine song. Now, the story behind the song is pretty funny. This is where we get into the, hey, I just produced Too Shy, #1 hit for Kajagoogoo. And everybody's like, well. Mind you, they still have not had a #1 US single yet. That's what the 80s are doing, bro. They are keeping the biggest band in the world off the #1 spot, Dan.
Was it Rocky again?
No, they're just keeping them away. Like they get close, but it's such a massive thing. Like the 80s had so many hit singles that they couldn't crack the top, the #1 spot. And they were like, Nick, you just wrote a #1 hit for the US. Why can't you do that for us? Which is a fair question. I would, if I was drinking coffee with my bandmate and he just made Too Shy, I'd be like, huh.
Dude, why did we get that?
Thank you. An obvious question. And they weren't douches about it. They were just like, look, dude, it would be nice to have a #1. We've reached all our pinnacles, but we still can't crack the #1 spot in the US. It would be nice to have that. And so he's like, okay, look, how about I hook you up with a #1? Oh, Nick Rhodes is a beast. What y'all talking about? He's like, okay, I'll tell you what. Why don't I go ahead and make you a #1 hit? And he's like, okay. Now, there was an argument, a bit of a debate. And Simon, obviously, and other members of the group were like, do we want to go? You know how the Beatles did like Yellow Submarine, Magic Mystery Tour, Magical Mystery
Started getting a little experimental.
Yes, he's like, I kind of want to do experimental. And other people were like, but we also want a #1 hit. And so they debated. They don't have much about this on Wikipedia, but I'm like, no, that's a story. Because they come out on the success side. Oh, that's a big decision. Instead of going Magical Mystery Tour and Sgt. Pepper, they decide, let's do a #1 hit. And this is the song that comes from it. And this is where they decide to go, period. They said, we're not going to do experimental. That's interesting. I would have liked to hear what Duran Duran sounds like experimenting. But they're like, we want a #1 hit instead. This was the #1 US single that they got. Finally, this song was the #1 hit. And that was because Nick Rhodes said, okay, fine, I'll hook you up. And gee, do you know how dope you have to be to say, I'll write you a #1 hit? And my question would then be, after everything was said and done, as we were driving to hotels, I'll be like, gee.
So why did you just do that in the first place?
Thank you. Isn't that a good question? And they never did it. They just were like, okay, thank
Hey,
you.
Nick, can I ask you a question real quick? Come here for a second, man.
They're like, why are we in this dark hallway? Come, let me holler at you real quick. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of part 1 of our Duran Duran story. We got to end it kind of early today because hard workers were hard working. Can't hate on that. Cannot hate on that. People were doing their jobs correctly, and it just so happened to coincide with us. That is it. It's perfectly fine that they were doing that. So I hope you guys...
What that means to you guys is that my gardeners were going apeshit in the backyard, and it was so loud that I couldn't record. I literally could not record. So we lost some time there. I'm sorry about that, but we are coming back.
Yes. Since we have some time. The fun part about this is why I'm so excited about this is new wave is a new thing for me. Not some of the artists, but the actual term and the umbrella under which they all sit. And so looking and seeing the Police under there, the Go-Go's. My goal is, I don't know if we're gonna do this. I hope we do. Well, we're gonna do the ladies of new wave. And when I look at the ladies of new wave, dear Lord, man, it's almost like us doing, like say we're like, okay, we're gonna do an episode on Motown. And then you look at what Motown consists of, and you're like, oh my God. All of them interesting artists, all of them influential. And all of the new wave artists, I think this move is influential today. Like there are certain things I hear now that came from new wave. There are certain things I see now that totally came from new wave.
It all comes back around again. It always does.
But I will even say it's stronger. I think that they haven't found something better than that, so they keep going to that well. They just haven't found anything better than that. And it's hard because new wave was in its bag, dude. These artists were in their bag, dude. The Police were in their bag. The Go-Go's were in their bag. You know what I'm saying? Howard Jones and this weird thing is, that's another artist that was fantastic. It's just when you have a behemoth behind you, it's hard to get your face above water, dude. It's just like the Silvers trying to be popular, a wonderfully amazing group, but the Jackson 5 existed. Same with the Osmonds. Great, talented kids, but the Jackson 5 existed. A lot of these bands, I'm realizing now, Duran Duran existed. If Duran Duran isn't a thing, we see a brand new group of people.
I created a monster. It's alive.
Gee, and the thing is, here's a problem. I was up till 5 this morning. I started working, like tapering off everything that I wanted to say at about yesterday at about, like 3, 4 in the morning. But then I got home last night at 1 or 2 o'clock and I was like, oh, I never looked at this place. And I go to this place. I'm like I opened a treasure trove and light shone on my eyes. I was like, there's more I want to say. And so it's a fun thing knowing that all these groups, if they weren't so influential, I wouldn't even talk about them. I just think like the more I listen to these people, the more I'm like, that is literally what such and such group is doing now. I'm going to go out on a limb. Okay, tell me this. What's that group? Oh, what's that group's name? Oh, they broke up. I forgot. It's a boy band. But a lot of these boy bands from the UK, I don't think they exist without Duran Duran.
You're talking about One Direction?
Yes. They do not exist without Duran Duran. They don't. They almost set like they were put together, and you even see their hair. Oh, gee, the more I talk about it. Gee, these guys, they set a standard. Like they're doing, and they're not even as talented, gee. Duran Duran was a group of talented guys. These guys aren't talented. And they showed that, oh, if you look this way and do this thing, you can get popular. And they did this thing. Imagine the group that actually started this thing. That's crazy. That's crazy, G. I do say that. Wow. Sean was totally right.
All of these things that people say, you say. Trust me, you say.
I totally say. And so, I'm excited for that. Are there, out of the new wave people, other than Duran Duran, is there anyone you're excited to talk about?
I sent you so many people, I have to think about that for a second. Let's see. I'll be honest with you. Tears for Fears, I don't know how much interest I'm going to take in that one, but we can talk about it for sure. It's not so much the music, but the story of the fucking Go-Go's, dude. That's a good story right there. You like those kind of stories? They're great. So I'm kind of excited to talk about the Go-Go's.
What about the Police?
I think that's going to be a musician's conversation.
I think it's going to be a drama conversation. I don't think they started off great from jump.
I'll be honest with you. I love their music. I know a ton of it. I don't really know that much about the Police, so I'll have to do some homework on it.
Is Wham new wave?
I think that they would probably be on the outskirts of new wave, but I think that they definitely came in at a time where it was still pretty popular.
Hey, that song, you know a song I ended up really like putting on repeat too?
What's that?
The Warrior.
Oh, it's the jam.
Gee, that
Scandal
song is fantastic, man.
I like Goodbye to You, the one we played last week.
Yes.
That's kind of my favorite song from them. But no, Patti Smythe was a great vocalist.
Gee, I didn't even know what they were saying. I didn't know what they were saying until I looked at the lyrics. I was like, oh, bang, bang. That's what she was saying. I'm going at the walls of heartache, like beating
You're
them.
shooting at the walls of
That's
heartache.
dope. I always was like, then on the boat and boaty. I was like, I don't know what he's saying. And then I read it. I was like, look at this awesome lyric right here.
That's a really funny thing when people start making up their own lyrics.
Oh,
Gail
for sure.
is famous for that.
Oh,
She
dude.
says shit that makes no sense, but she's like, I've been saying it my whole life.
Gee, same with me. My mom used to get so mad at me. She's like, that's not what they're saying. That's not what they're saying. I'm just like, yeah, but
Stop it, Steven.
she's like, that's not, but I'd sing it so well. And she's like, you're singing it well, but it's just not what they're saying. It's not, the lyrics you're saying don't even make sense. You're like, oh, you're right. That doesn't make any sense. But I love these, like, certain lyricists are just like, again, going back to Duran Duran, I think that it's just, they were able, when they were in their bag, like the homeboy said, he's like, we could have strung any words together and made a hit. Oh,
We just shit out music. We didn't care.
I think people could get there again if they just stop worrying about what other people thought of them. And there's a lot of undertones of why I love this story so much. There's a lot of undertones of just like this, like Toto. People told Toto, you're not going to be a hit machine. You can't be good because you're a bunch of amazing musicians, and amazing musicians does not a hit maker make. And they said, really? Just because we're good musicians, we can't make hits? And they said, no, you can't. And they made Africa. They were just session musicians. Rosanna. They were just session musicians.
Hold the Line.
Exactly.
They made some damn good songs.
They wrote Human Nature. Like they were the session musicians on Thriller. But they're like, well, yeah, that's what you do. And they're like, is it now? It's stuff like that, where it's just like, you can be good and be good. You can do both of those things at the same time. One doesn't take from the other. Simon Le Bon was a great singer and he wrote good lyrics. Nick Rhodes knew how to arrange things. They technically didn't call him a producer, but in ways he did. You know what I'm saying? Andy was great on that guitar. Like the producer almost just had a great job with them because they all kind of knew their thing. They all knew exactly. That's another thing they said in the article. They all knew exactly what lane they were in. No one tried to cross over. When that started happening is when the problems occurred. When people start crossing over into other lanes.
So when you start getting to that artistic differences.
Bingo. And Simon never tried to be like, let me play piano. He knew, oh, that's not my thing. But Andy was like, I hate putting it on him, but he wanted the spotlight. That was a thing. And for Roger, it was just too much. He's like, turns out superstardom is terrible in his brain. It was terrible.
There's always the quiet one in the band. He was the quiet one.
Yes. And he's like, it would be nice to be able to go to the liquor store real quick. Just go from my hotel to the liquor store and then back.
I'm just trying to hit a Target to get some socks.
That's it. And I didn't realize, oh, he can't do that. He can't go to the store. He can't do anything. Simon didn't bother him too much. He was like, yeah, this is what we wanted. All of this is what we wanted. And then Andy was like, I want that and then some. And Roger was like, I just want to go to McDonald's, G. And I never thought about how much of a pain it could be if you can't go anywhere without being noticed. Like if you're at the gym and someone's looking at you and the first look they give you, you start thinking, oh no, did they make me?
You know it.
You
just
know
can't
it.
even be standing on a street corner for a second because you're going to start attracting attention.
Exactly.
One person comes up, 2 people come up, 3 people come up.
Bingo. And all of a sudden, it's not a bunch of people kind of coming around you. You're shutting Times Square down because one of Duran Duran's here. Dude.
They actually did that. They shut down Times Square because they did a record signing.
That happened right after Hungry Like the Wolf came out. They didn't know it was going to be like that. That Times Square, that shutdown. And
Well, they haven't seen it since Beatlemania.
Bingo. And so they're like, oh. And again, I can see how each one of them would want it. Andy probably loved it. However, if I have 20 people and they're following me and I look over and Simon has 400, you're like, wait a minute.
The ego kicks in again.
It has to, right? Where everyone's clamoring over to get an autograph and you're like, here, okay, fine. And they're like, no, Simon's. You're like, wait a minute. What? This song wouldn't. It's such an interesting, again, that's why I love this story, is because it's such an interesting dissection of the human psyche of what happened in Duran Duran. And I love it. And I can't wait. We're going to be recording. And then it gives us both time to brush up on our Duran Duran. Now I have a lot to catch up on now. I got a lot to catch up on. I have a lot to write up.
Apparently I do too.
No, not at all. Again, this is me brand new into this. A lot of these, I'm sure a lot of folks are like, yeah, we already knew that. But this is me brand new into Duran Duran. So bear with me as I'm excited over stuff everybody knew already.
There's something that I really enjoy about this show. It is that there are times where I'll say something. I'm not saying that well, you know what? I am going to say it. I was right on this one. But there are times when I'm trying to sell you something.
Yes.
And just depending on the Steve mood that I get, it's either going to sink right in or it's going to bounce right off.
Totally.
And I know for a fact I've tried to turn you on to Duran Duran before.
You have.
And that's great, though. It's great because it's funny because it's like as soon as you lock onto it and realize that I'm kind of speaking the truth about it, or at least we share a similar opinion, you just go off. And I really appreciate that. So I'm glad I got to turn you on to Duran Duran, dude.
Like, as in, no lie. If they were doing a show, it wouldn't be it's going to be a conversation. I'm like, do I want to go? I might go check out Duran Duran. The only thing that would stop me is people a little older than me screaming at the top of that's the only thing. I'd be like,
oh, it's going to happen.
Exactly. I'm like, do I want to do
There's no way around that.
People, I adore you guys. Do you know what? I would say that for your adoration, I am hungry like the wolf.
That's a hot pool, buddy.
Yeah, I try. And so I'm going to get out of here, and your chauffeur for the rest of the show will be Dan.
That's out. 2 hot pools right there.
I'm out.
Always leaving me with something to do. A man gives me 2 hot pools I got to compete with right there. I'm not going to compete. That's Steve Hudson right there. The guy's on fire today. He just learned about Duran Duran. I've known about him for a while, though, and it's just weird to hear like all this shit that I didn't know. There's a lot that I did. So, like, you're telling me things, man, and I go, oh yeah, I remember that. But it's just so weird that everything's so fresh in your head right now, and these stories have been around for so long, and this music's been around for so long. But good on you, dude. I'm glad that you're a part of the team now. Anyway, guys, we'll be back next week. We have part 2 of the Duran Duran saga, and then who knows what we're going to get into. We'll see. We'll play it by ear. We are the Heroes of Noise, and that's kind of what we do. My name is Dan Ramirez. Thank you for listening to episode 63, the Duran Duran special. People, be good to yourselves. Be good to the people around you. It's very important, all right? Other than that, I'm out. Peace.